All right, everybody. Welcome back to the Asking for a Friend podcast. I'm William. This is my wife, Jul.
Hi.
We are so excited to continue this podcast. We started it with our marriage series at Downtown Community Church. And this is a chance for us to answer your questions and kind of dig in a lot more practical side to marriage, parenting, relationships, engagement, all the things.
All the hot topics.
Yeah. So episode 3.
Here we are.
Let's do it. Let's dig in.
All right. First question for you, William.
Yeah.
No, for us both. So before the two become one flesh in marriage, how can you cultivate a Christ-centered relationship while dating? And how do you avoid the trap of using one another as a crutch for your walk with the Lord?
Yeah. Love it. I love this question because we talk a lot about this, Genesis, the two, leave your father and mother, become one flesh as you get married. Yet when you're in this like dating period, hey, as we talked about last episode, you're either single or you're married. So you're in this dating period, you're kind of feeling out like, hey, is this who I want to be with? Is this the person I want to be with, to spend the rest of my life with, as Ben said last week? Is this the person I want to spend 20 years doing a group project with, of raising our kids?
Absolutely.
And I think also we talk a lot about physical boundaries within dating relationship, which is very important, right? Like setting up accountability and making sure we don't fall into sexual sin. But I think this digs into what are the spiritual boundaries that we also need to put in place when you're dating someone. I was thinking of a couple, want to get your thoughts on it as well, is the first one is, I would say, keep your Jesus time personal. At the end of the day, your relationship with Jesus is a personal relationship. Even when you're married, it's still a personal relationship. And I think people think it's cute to do a devotional together, or, we're going to go do our quiet times together, or whatever the case is. The danger in that is that you easily become dependent on the other person for your quiet time.
Yeah, you become dependent on that, you rely on that, and that becomes the place of your personal time.
Yeah.
So obviously that's a good thing, a beneficial thing, in addition to having your own personal quiet time devotion, but don't make that the time.
Correct. Yeah. The second thing I'd say, and it sounds like it doesn't connect, but it does, is to keep your friends. I see this so often that boyfriend, girlfriend becomes everything, becomes your best friend, becomes the person you hang out with, becomes your accountability partner, becomes all these different things, right? And everything is too closely knit into this one person. Even when you're married, you still need friends, right? I still need guys that I hang out with. You still need girls that you hang out with. Still need other couples that we have friendships, relationships with. And so the danger, especially in dating, is to they become your world.
No, absolutely. We see that all the time, hear that all the time. And it's easy to be guilty of that. So you have got to, hold each other to that. Your friends will be the first to tell you, hey, we don't see you anymore. Ever since you started dating so-and-so, you're gone. And listen to them, right? There's merit to that, keeping those friendships. So like the question says, not falling into that trap of relying on that person, because reality is a lot of relationships don't work out, and a lot of relationships aren't necessarily going to be the one that you marry.
Sure.
And so you put all this reliance into that one person, that one friendship, all of these things. And then if it doesn't work out, you're in a place you didn't need to be.
Totally. And it also, I remember for us when we were dating, my confidence grew in who you were as your ministry time. We both worked in youth ministry, but kind of separate youth groups that worked together. My confidence grew in the woman you were called to be, and who you were as I saw you doing ministry kind of on your own in a way, and we I'd say that the last part of this is still continue to talk and do life together and talk about what you're learning.
Absolutely.
And I think that's important, but it's just not becoming so reliant on the other person that these spiritual boundaries, just if you don't put them up, can easily make it all muddy.
Yeah. And so just keep in mind, if you feel like this is happening in your relationship, one side or the other, like you need to pay attention to those flags and to those things and to those friends or family that chime in to what they say, and make sure that you are putting those boundaries in place so that you're not relying on that person that you're dating for those things. So pay attention to those red flags and listen to them.
Definitely.
Yep.
Dating is important. Dating is okay. And dating is helping you figure out who you're going to be with. And like you said, it might not work out. Hey, learn from that. What are the things that you learned from that other person? What are the things that you're looking for as you continue to follow Jesus and try to find that person?
Absolutely.
So, all right, next question. What is your advice to people who have been cheated on or are struggling, but want to believe they'll find a loyal, godly partner out there one day?
Yeah. So changing subject, tough, hard question.
Yeah.
But something that probably doesn't get talked about as much.
It's sensitive.
It's very sensitive. It's a very difficult space to be in. And I think a fair amount of marriages, and relationships go through that.
Sure.
So it is something that we need to talk about. I think one of the things when we were talking this through is what we see in the danger of that is letting the bitterness, the anger, the fear, all of that comes, from that infidelity, dictating your future relationships. And that's the space that you don't want to stay in. Like those are very fair feelings and emotions and things that, couples go through when that happens. Yeah. But the damage that it does to your future relationships is staying in that space. It can be catastrophic for not just couples, but marriages that have kids involved, because you can start to parent out of that fear, anger, resentment, bitterness. Yeah. And your kids see that and pick up on that. And then the things that you say about your former spouse and all of that. Sure. So I think one of the most important things we wanted to share was absolutely there's hope for future, loyal, solid, godly relationships. But one of the most important things is to take that time to heal. Yeah. Take that time to process and get through that. Certainly do not rush into the next relationship. Sure. But you cannot stay in that space forever. Sure. And you've got to be able to heal and, help your kids heal from that if you have kids involved, to be able to have that future godly relationship. Sure. For sure. Sure.
It's, we're big believers in generational blessings and generational cursings, right? And it's biblical. And the reality is, I feel for people that go through that. Like that's a sin that's done against you, and it incredibly painful, incredibly hurtful, and takes a while to heal, right? And so it's not something you, like you said, you don't just rush past it, but you do have to continue to heal past it and not let that wound stay open, and impact the next generation, impact your kids, and impact what's going to happen with them, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and we'll talk about this more, but you want to model that behavior, for your family, for your kids. We realize that's an extremely difficult thing to do, but it's important, and you don't want to carry that bitterness and hurt, into the rest of your family and your relationships. Taking the time to heal, taking the time to process, taking the time to obviously before jumping into, to the next relationship, and not judging, the next person based on, mistakes of somebody else. I think a lot of people struggle with that. And
easier said than done.
Easier said than done.
Yeah. But it's a reality that you have to work through, you have to get past, and, whether that's through therapy and through, praying about it and talking it out, right? But not letting what the sin that was done against you impact how you interact with the next person you're going to be with.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay, so next question for you.
Yeah.
How do you best disciple your kids? What are some actionable steps, some things that we can actually do to disciple our kids? Dad.
we're getting into the stuff that gets me fired up. So hopefully I
Yeah.
don't ramble too long on here. But it said that your greatest contribution may not be something you do, but someone you raise. And so the reality is nothing is more important for us. Nothing is more important than discipling our kids and raising our kids up to be followers of Jesus. At the end of the day, I could pastor a church of thousands of people. We could lead, all these different great things. I don't care. Our kids are the most important thing to us. And so that's like the mindset we're called to have. I think of just the general idea of discipleship, like people that were disciples in Jesus's day, as Jesus is calling them to be disciples, they lived with these people. They did day-to-day life with them. We have no greater chance to disciple someone than when we have our kids living in our home for 18 years. Yes. And as we know, our boys are 9, 7, and 3, and that time goes by quick. Like the reality that our oldest, we're halfway done with that time is like terrifying, right? And so I think there are the urgency that has to be there as a parent of how to disciple your kids. So that's my opening thought.
Opening thought. And my principle kind of behind our mindset, or our principle behind that, remember, like, you're modeling behavior regardless.
Yeah.
So you're either modeling behavior you want them to have or behavior that you don't want them to have. So
sure.
You're already doing that. So keep in mind, you want and we want to help, and we strive to do behavior and do things that they will then imitate and take on themselves. I mean, that's the definition of discipleship. So
yeah, exactly. And so I think to preface this as well, as your kids go through 3 main stages, right? Developmentally. First stage is caretaker. As a parent, you're the caretaker of your child. This is kind of the 0 to 5 range. You're just straight survival mode. And if you're in that stage, you know exactly what I'm talking about, right?
You're surviving right now.
You're surviving.
You're probably not listening to this.
You're teaching them how to sleep, to eat, just to listen, right? Once you kind of get out of that caretaker mode, you move into coach mode, coach mode, and again, you need to discern like where your child's at developmentally, all these different things.
Yeah, these aren't like official ages. These are just kind of parameters.
Yeah. And so they enter into coach mode, and this is the time that the rest of the time they are in your home. You are their coach. And we get coaches all the time for sports, football, baseball, golf, whatever the case is. But when it comes to their spiritual walk, you as their mom and as their dad, you are their spiritual coach. And so just like in any sporting thing, you are more involved earlier on with the fundamentals of what that looks like. And as they grow up and as they mature in their sport, you become maybe a little bit more hands-off and a little bit more of a sideline coach or whatever the case is. So that's kind of the mindset that you kind of go to in that coaching age of hey, I'm spiritually developing my kid. I'm spiritually coaching my kid while they're living in my home. The next phase is as a parent discipler, you are their counselor. And so depending on how well you coached your kid when they were in your home depends on how well you will be their counselor when they move out.
If they'll come back to you as their counselor. Like, that is our goal as mom and dad. We want to set up their childhood so that we have established this relationship with them, so that when they move out, and when they leave and everything like that, they will come to us as counselor, as the advice giver, as
correct. Yeah.
That type of role.
Yeah, exactly. And we've been honored and thankful for our parents, what they've modeled for us, and continually going back to them of different life things that we're walking through, and they've been a counsel for us. So those are kind of the 3 main stages as your kid. You're always their parent is kind of the bottom line, right? As your kid is growing up and maturing. So practically speaking, I think there are things that we've implemented that I want to share that that we continue are growing in
Yep.
and maturing in. So the first one is, and this is, man, if you're in the caretaker phase, if you're in the coach phase, counsel phase, whatever it is we read a book, Praying Circles Over the Life of Your Children. Highly recommend it. And one of the big principles from that is to have a life verse for your child. And so, we prayed over, hey, what's a life verse for our kid? We have 3 boys, and the way it kind of worked out, the Lord kind of gave us one verse for all 3 of them, which is 1 Timothy 6:11, which I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but it's, O men of God, flee the things of this world, pursue righteousness, godliness, faith, hope, love, gentleness, steadfastness. And that's a verse that we have prayed over our boys every single night since they were born, right? And there's power in praying
Absolutely.
scripture over your child. And so whether they are still in the mom's stomach and or whether they are an infant in a crib or whether they are 18 years old,
Absolutely.
like, man, I encourage you that's a basic principle that you can implement, a habit that you can create of just praying over your child. The second thing I'd say is create a roadmap. Just like any good coach, they have a plan. They know what they're trying to accomplish. So as the spiritual leaders of your household, as the father, as the mother, man, what is the roadmap that you want to create for your children?
Yeah.
For us, we have boys. The John Tyson's book, The Intentional Father, was very helpful for me and very practical of, man, what is that roadmap to manhood for my boys?
Sure.
And knowing these are the milestones I want to hit. These are the impression that I want to make on them as they grow up.
Yeah. And I would say, like, there's no time that's too late with that.
100%.
If you're a parent and you're listening and your kids are older and they're, high school and you're
Yep.
like, gosh, we never made a roadmap. Is it too late now?
Never too late.
I mean, it starts with a conversation that we had and
Yeah.
sat down, or conversations, and said, like, at the end of the day, what do we want to teach them? What do we want them to know? If they, they leave this house one day and 3 things that they'll remember out of everything else,
Sure.
what are those 3 things? So it doesn't, there's no time that's too late. Your kids will look to you and come to you always. So start now, whatever the ages may be, young, old, middle, whatever. Like, you can still have and make a roadmap of what that.
Oh my gosh,
what
yeah,
you want that
exactly.
to be.
I'd say it's never. Well, there's age appropriate things,
Sure.
but it's never too early to start planning and preparing. I think even for us, that kind of time kind of snuck up on us in some ways. Like, oh man, we're here. And if you're to that point, if you feel like it's been too late, man, have conversations around it. It's okay to, like, I think one of the most powerful things you can do as a parent is also apologize and to talk about it and to say, hey, this is an area that I want to do better in, and I apologize that I haven't done better.
Yeah.
And so I'm committing to be better in this area, to spiritually lead you better. And man, imagine the impact if you think about your parents and if they would have said that to you, and said, hey, I'm sorry for that. I haven't done this and I want to be better at this. Like, how the impact that's going to have on your children. So you agree, never too late. I'd say the next practice that, again, age appropriate is we call our kids up. I heard this recently and I loved it. Our kids are kids. And if we consistently go down to our kids' level and be at our kids' level, they will never be called up. And so we need to look at our kids and say, hey, I'm calling you up to a higher standard. And that, again, age appropriate, that looks different, but it's also is sooner than you actually think it is.
Sure.
I think.
So give us an example. What do you mean?
Yeah. For me, that is, allowing my kids to participate in church activities that, maybe they, it's not a kids event.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So our 2 older boys love to come early with me to church. I'm thankful. I'm very thankful they do, but I have to leave the house at 6:30 in the morning, and it's funny, they're dressed and ready to go by 6:15.
Way sooner than they are for school.
Exactly. Way more than school. Just recently we had a Cambodia night where we're hearing about the mission work that our friends are doing over in Cambodia. And I said, hey boys, I want you to come with me. I want you to learn. And they're 9 and 7. They're boys. They're restless. They didn't sit for an hour and a half.
Sure.
But I was also encouraged by how much they did learn and how much they did consume and how much they did hear. So I think that's definitely part of it. I also think from a practical standpoint, like, hey, I want you to do the dishes. I want you to wipe the counters. I want you to feed the dog. I want you to take the trash out. Like the very practical things, the disciplines that they're instilling that might not be quote unquote spiritual per se, but it's instilling habits in them that are preparing them to be the men of God that they're called to be.
Absolutely. Or children of God. Yes. Like exactly. We have boys. Not everyone does, but absolutely. We do that. Mom probably does that more at home, with them, but I'm guilty. You have multiple kids. There's always a baby of, oh, that one's too little. And we've had to, William has helped, but stop that and say, no, like we want to call each one of our kids up, whatever that looks like for them
100%.
Spiritually, physically with their habits, their disciplines, everything. So that is one thing. And, like anything else, when you do that with kids, like they appreciate that and they feel, confident with that and things like that. So it's important.
Yeah. Their immediate response might not be appreciation.
Oh, it's not.
But long-term,
Yes.
like they do, right? And over time they do.
Yep.
And they might be frustrated that you are asking more of them. But at the end of the day, you're the parents.
Yep.
Our responsibility is to raise godly men and godly women.
Yep.
So whatever that takes, that's what we're here for. You got plenty of friends, you got plenty of mentors. You only got one dad and you only got one mom. So like, we're going to continue to press into that.
Yep. And one thing, I love like tangible, realistic things.
Yeah.
Like, it's easy to be like, oh, these are the big overarching things we want our kids to know. But what are like day to day? What can we do? What can we start today with them? One thing we just recently started, kind of like not really intentionally, but kind of intentionally, was making family dinners a priority. Yeah. And we're kind of in a transition from like younger kids to like, elementary and middle and starting to get, older kids. And, you're like William said, that caretaker stage is survival. You're just trying to get through meals and everyone be fed and whatever. So with that transition, we wanted to make family dinners every night. Every day we eat, right? Every day we have dinner.
Every day we can.
Every day we can make that a priority where we sit with the kids. We're all eating together, because that life before didn't really look like that. It kind of can easily look like a shuffle. And so we did that. So we said, we want to do this. We talked to the kids about it, and then we just started doing it. And it is awful. It is chaotic. It is madness. The house is an absolute wreck. And I think we end up,
taco night and spaghetti night is just, it's just a mess.
We have a white table.
That was dumb.
So don't take our advice. But all that to say, it has been great.
Yeah.
It is so much fun. And now our kids, like, they look forward to it and they will call us out. If William and I, heaven forbid, have a date night or an event or something we have to go to, they're like, we're not having family dinner tonight.
What are we doing?
We have a babysitter, grandma. No, so it really has been really good. But that is an easy thing. Again, doesn't matter the stages or ages of your kids. And we're not saying make it dinner, but have a daily thing where your family does make that a priority to come together. Because that is precious time that one day they will be gone and you won't get it back.
Yeah. Yeah. I think for us, it was the reality of like, okay, if we don't start this at some point, when is it going to start?
Sure.
And so it's like Jul said, it's chaotic. There's a lot to it. But it has gotten better.
Sure.
Like there's maybe 7 minutes of like everyone sitting still.
Organized conversation.
And that's okay. Like that, the point is that it's happening. So, it's instilling those habits. It's having those conversations, that is building the relationship with you and your kids. And
I love that, like, they are starting to learn and realize that, like, your kids too, like, we are all making that a priority. Mm-hmm. It's
put your phone away.
Yes. This is your time. Away. We're paying attention to you. You're paying attention to us. We're together here as this family time. So, highly recommend doing something like that you do every day or every day that you can.
Sure.
You will not regret that time.
Yeah. Yep, exactly. And I'd say to kind of piggyback on that as well is prioritizing one-on-one time with each of your children. Especially if you have multiple kids, this becomes so hard. For us, the kids go to bed later and later, then they used to go to bed at 7. Now it's like 9. And so, I'm like, I just want my time. I want alone time. But to sit in their room, to talk with them, to ask them about their day, to ask them what they're learning, to, we always try to ask, what do you learn in Sunday school? What's your memory verse? Whatever it is, and having those like continual conversations, one-on-one. Honestly, like we found that sometimes the best thing is just to go in their room and just sit and like not ask any questions. And they tend to start talking. Some of your kids,
some are talkers.
Some talk more than others.
Some you have to put a timer on, and others you have to nudge and pull it out of. But that's part of it too. But I mean, we are big on trying, and we're doing this now, is to like create that space with them so
Correct.
that we can have it, right? We don't know what's going to come of that. But like if we give them the space and we give them the time and the one-on-one, we kind of try to tag team it.
Yeah. We call it the in the pastoral world, the ministry of presence, right?
Sure.
The ministry of just being there.
Yep.
And it's not always just about what you say, but it's just practically being there.
Being there.
Yep. And I'd say one last thing on this is, as I look to the future, because I think it's, as the leader of your home, it's always important to look to the future. What does that look like? What do devotionals look like with your kids? What is that? Maybe that's a devotional gift you give your child to help them start to work through different things. We have times where we read the Bible and we read stories, and we have the storybook Bible and different things like that. But, what are those habits that I can instill in my teenager and
Sure.
in my middle schooler and all those different things as they mature as well? So again, even if you're not in that stage, as a leader, your job is to lead currently, but then also lead for the future.
Yes. And last thing, I promise we're done. We talk.
I told you this is what gets me fired up.
We strive to, like, at the very least, to model that behavior, right? Like I laugh, and I've talked to my sister-in-law and plenty of moms about this. Like, you have your quiet time in the morning, ends up not being so quiet.
Sure.
Your kids find you, right, in your corner, your whatever, which is obviously okay. Like, hey, I might have had 5-10 minutes like of quiet time in the Word, whatever, but they also see you every day making that a priority and not stopping it and not saying, well, hey, you're down here, let's play. But like, hey, you can come sit on mommy's lap while we do this. And I always want to do that. In all the things, again, we model behavior one way or another.
Yep, exactly.
So I want it to be the things that will help them be the best godly men, godly kids that we can raise. Yep. So.
Awesome. Love it. Well, thank you guys again for listening, for tuning in. Remember to text in your questions, anonymous questions, to 94000. We just want to be a resource. We want to be a tool to help you. So please do not hesitate to ask those questions. And
we appreciate your feedback, but we so appreciate your questions. Let us carry on the conversation best way we can help, for sure. 94000.
All right. Love you guys.